Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos. I will be serving as your acting chair today. Both our chair and vice chair are unavailable. I'm not sure what's up with, I'm guessing there's surf, and that's why Serge is not here. But Vice Chair Vivian Moreno is on maternity leave, and we're very happy for her. Michelle is coming soon, and we're thrilled for their family. Before we start, I'd like to ask our clerk to confirm that we have a quorum.
We have a quorum, acting chair.
Thank you, Evelina. And I'd also like to report that it's not John Kirk here as our head of legal because I'm chairing, but because John feels it's important to be here today. I'm glad he's here.
As long as that's what you think.
Exactly. We've confirmed our quorum. Simultaneous interpretation is available for this meeting, and I'd like to ask our interpreter to briefly explain how this feature works. Por favor.
Thank you, Chair. We'll begin with the announcement in Spanish and then we'll be back with the announcement in English. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Además, para acceder a los servicios de interpretación de manera presencial, pida auriculares, por favor, en la recepción. To use the Zoom interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select either English or Spanish. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Additionally, to access English, Spanish simultaneous interpretation in the room in person, check out the headset from the receptionist. Thank you, Chair.
Muchísimas gracias. And now we'll do a roll call for attendance, please.
South County, acting chair, Bill Zatke.
Here.
East County, Jack Chu.
Here.
City of San Diego is absent. County of San Diego, Supervisor Joel Anderson.
Here.
Imperial County, Supervisor Jesus Eduardo Escobar.
Good afternoon.
North County Coastal is absent. North County Inland is absent. And advisory members, Riverside County, Supervisor Crystal Reese.
Here.
Republic of Mexico, Honorable Natalia Figueroa.
Here.
Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association is absent. Caltrans Director Gustavo Gallarda.
Here.
San Diego County Water Authority, it's Sandag.
Here.
Southern California Association of Governments is absent. Orange County is absent. And that would be all the members. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk, very much. Now, let me add this. Respectfully acknowledge that we live and work on traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of tribal nations, including the Kumeyaay, Liseño, Copeño, and Cahuilla peoples. We share strong historical and cultural roots that unite us with all our neighbors. Of all the folks at Sandag that serve on these committees, this particular committee represents, I think, the biggest example of that. Today is a special day. Finally, we're back for in-person meetings. Woohoo! The past have not only been months of crisis, but many challenges remain, and strengthen our collaboration with our neighbors is an important thing to do. We're back in person, but we are keeping a hybrid format allowing public presentation via Zoom, as well as for some outside presentations. We'll have one of those later today. There are some border committee members participating by Zoom. It's important, those on the committee that are participating by Zoom, you are treated as a member of the public. So when it's time for the public to speak, please raise your hand. You'll be given 3 minutes, and you're welcome to contribute to today's meeting. You will not have voting privileges if you're online. And I'd like to also review the process for conducting the meeting virtually via Zoom, and I believe we have some discussions from the clerk about that. Oh, no, it's on my script. Do you do that?
Yes.
Go for it.
If you are a member of the public and would like to speak on an item, please use the raise hand icon in the Zoom toolbar. When you are called on by the chair, you will be unmuted by Sandag staff. If you are calling by phone, you may need to enter *6. To unmute yourself after your comments, you will be muted by Sandag staff. If you are calling into the meeting, please press *9 on your phone if you would like to comment on an item. All comments, whether emailed or live, will be made a part of today's meeting record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to start our remarks now with offering a salute to our tribal nation representatives. Today, the fourth Friday of September is California's Native Americans Day. Today, our neighbors and partners are participating in celebrations held in Sacramento and throughout the state. As we've done in the past, today we join them from our meeting, recognizing their contribution to the prosperity of our San Diego region and our country. On a different topic, I want to recognize that we're celebrating the United States National Hispanic Heritage Month this month from September 15th until October 15th. And Hector reminded me that this is important, and I didn't need reminding. It's because it's a social equity matter, because we're close to Mexico and Latin America, and more importantly, it's because of our historic heritage of our San Diego region. According to the census and according to the notes that I've been provided by Hector, about 4 of every 10 San Diegans are Hispanics. This proportion is of younger generations, even a majority of newborn babies. Our Hispanic community is in every place in San Diego, and the pandemic revealed that a huge community of San Diegans sleep every day in Tijuana, returning to San Diego, sleep and live on both sides of the border. Thank you very much. Our 2 celebrations today remind us we have much to learn and much to change to eliminate disparities and ensure that safe, healthy, accessible, and inclusive opportunities are available to everyone. Working together, we can build a brighter future for everyone, and this Borders Committee represents a clear example of that. On to our busy agenda. Do we have any public comments for today's agenda that are not related to agenda items?
We do not have any hands raised at this moment, Acting Chair.
Okay, and I'll kick that out to committee members. Any committee members or advisory members here today that would have any comments to share with the group for the good of the order? Jesus? Okay. All right. No public comments, no member comments. On to the agency report. Victoria, would you join us at the microphone? Oh, you're already here. Perfect. We've invited in Victoria Stackwood to start us off with the agency report. Item number 2 on our agenda. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We hope you enjoyed a nice break from the meeting last month. It's great to see you all today. Sandag staff has been busy. As you may have heard, the Air Resources Board certified the 2021 Regional Transportation Plan and confirmed that it's compliant with state and federal guidelines. This means that hundreds of millions of dollars can continue to flow to our region for important projects such as the Youth Opportunity Pass, Losan Rail Realignment, Otay Mesa East, and many more. You may have also seen in the news recently that thanks to Senator Pro Tem Tony Atkins, Sandag recently received $300 million for the Losan Rail Realignment Project. This funding will start the flowing by the end of the year to environmentally clear design to move all the tracks off of the bluff. We couldn't be more excited to move forward on this critical project, and it's another project that has been in the conversations for years, and now we're making it happen. Also earlier this week, we hosted directors of the Strategic Growth Council and the Office of Planning and Research on the Bluffs, in fact. We had a chance to talk to them also about the Youth Opportunity Pass. Also, last month, we achieved a major milestone for one of our priority projects, Otay Mesa East. Sandag and Caltrans broke ground. We also had the pleasure to welcome U.S. Senator Alex Padilla for a tour of the SR-11 Otay Mesa East project. I'm happy to share that Sandag and Caltrans have been awarded $150 million through the US DOT Infrastructure for Rebuilding America, or INFRA, grant program to construct the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry. This was the largest grant amount awarded nationally. We are extremely grateful to Senator Padilla, Congressman Vargas, and all of our regional leaders who worked to make this happen for us and deliver a historical connection between the US and Mexico. This is a testament of fantastic staff work on our project and our partnership with Caltrans. Another recent accomplishment for Otay Mesa East team is the signing of SB 985, which brings us one step closer to achieving a faster, more reliable border crossing with the passage of Otay Mesa East Toll Facility Act. Thank you to Governor Newsom, Senator Benueso, Assemblymember Alvarez for supporting the project. Today, you will hear more about the revenue sharing agreement with Mexico. This is an agreement that will financially bind both sides of the border to formalize how toll revenues from SR 11 will be managed. We will have a special joint meeting on October 14th, and we hope that all of you can join us as we seek board approval based on your recommendations, approval of this appointment agreement. In other exciting news, Sandag will be hosting a community fair Sunday, October 9th at the Rugoco Park near Seaport Village to highlight the projects and programs that we are delivering throughout the region. The event will also highlight Sandag's request for innovative concepts and provide 3 finalists the opportunity to unveil their ideas publicly and actively receive input from community members. It will be an excellent opportunity for the community to learn what Sandag has to offer and to interact with us, and we hope you can all join us for this special event. Next month, Sandag will also be participating in Rideshare Week from October 3rd to October 9th. We encourage individuals to pledge participation by sharing a ride through the alternative modes of transportation. Our work in housing also continues. We have received approval from the California Housing and Community Development on our Regional Early Action Plan 2.0 application. This means that we can use 10% of our $43 million allocation to start outreach and education to develop our regional housing program. Staff also recently kicked off a regional anti-displacement strategy and early implementation action of the 2021 Regional Transportation Plan. This work is essential to the agency's commitment to equity and holding ourselves accountable to the projects that we build and support that are not, to make sure that they are not negatively impacting communities. The Data Science Department is also excited to announce the launch of the agency's first open data portal. In the coming months, the new portal will replace Data Surfer, which has housed our estimates and forecast data in the region and will also be home to public safety data, big data sets, GIS data sets, and other portals. Staff is also working on creating a mobility data clearinghouse and a housing policy planning tool to help the region make important policy decisions. If you are interested in taking a look at our portal, you can view it at opendata.sandag.org. Lastly, we recently updated the Sandag Language Assistance Plan. This document outlines the agency's measures to assist people with limited English proficiency. This work ties directly to Sandag's commitment to equity and our core value. The advancement of equity and inclusion is embedded in everything that we do. Staff has been provided the guidelines and a variety of resources to link translation, interpretation requests for, let me say that again, variety of resources to link translation and interpretation requests, how to log on with interactions with people with limited English proficiency and more. So we hope to streamline this process. We want to thank you for helping Sandag fulfill our responsibilities to ensure that we provide an adequate language assistance program, and thank you for your continued support. This concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
We'll get to that in a second. Any public comments on Victoria's report?
There are no hands raised at this moment, Acting Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Crystal.
That was by far the best update I've seen at any board I've ever come to. Absolutely amazing. Thank you for that update.
Any others? Go ahead, Gustavo.
Thank you, Chair Sankey. I wanted to echo Victoria's comments about the OTA-MSI's Port of Entry grant that we received. This $150 million is a testament of the partnership that Caltrans and Sandag has, and also with the federal government. All 3 pieces of government here working together to open this port of entry. Like Victoria mentioned, we're going to hear about an item later in the agenda about the revenue sharing agreement. But also a reminder that this project has been present in this Borders Committee, and this Borders Committee has been supportive of these projects all along. So you are all part of why we received this grant. So thank you for your leadership and your support for the project. Thank you, Victoria, Hector, and Maria and Mario and Nikki and their teams for working very hard on that application and getting the largest award in the nation to the Department of Transportation here in California for that project. Thanks.
That's fantastic news. On this particular item and all the other things that Victoria recognized in her report, I think Sandag's doing some pretty amazing work. Definitely want to recognize their staff, not only the ones that support us here in our borders environment, but throughout the Sandag team. I recall at the Transportation Committee, Hassan making some very eloquent remarks relative to the team, and if I could echo those, I would like to do that now. Okay. Moving on to item agenda number 3, it's approval of the minutes. Everybody's had a chance to review the minutes from March 25th, from April 15th, and June 24th, and also on the on this particular item, which is included in the consent agenda, is a request for innovative concepts. Does anybody have any comments or questions on any of those 4 items? If you'd like more information on innovative concepts, we have a staff member available. No, okay, and then I entertain a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda along with those 4 items.
Motion to approve.
Jesus, and motion from Supervisor Anderson. Any public comments on that particular consent agenda item?
No public comments on this
Okay,
item.
thank you very much. We'll go ahead and vote now, please.
City of San Diego.
No, it's not.
They- Okay, let's go ahead and do a hand raise vote. The clerk has asked for a hand raise vote, so if you just raise your hand if you're approving the consent agenda, if you're a voting member. Any abstentions or opposed? None on either of those things. Thank you, Tessa. Okay, Jimena, are you about ready? Okay, you're next up.
The item passes unanimously with those members present.
Perfect. Well, yeah, and pay no attention to the screen, I guess. We're having little issues there. So our agenda item number 5 is the 2022 binational delegation to Mexico City. It's a fabulous trip. I've been on it twice. I'm going to go on it again for my last trip to Mexico City. Issues are broad, and they build consensus between our nations. And to hear more about that, Jimena from the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce is here to talk about that.
All right, thank you for the introduction. Thank you all to everyone, elected officials and staff, and the entire committee for the invitation to give a brief overview of this amazing trip we have our next month. So as you may know, the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce has 3 delegation trips throughout the entire year, this being one of them. Our last trip took place in 2019, and due to COVID-19 circumstances, some of you might remember that we transitioned to a virtual summit to meet with key federal officials. But we will be heading back to Mexico City from October 23rd to the 26th. The presentation, I think we can skip on that if it's not available. There we go. Next slide, please. So these are some of our advocacy goals. They range from border infrastructure and efficiencies to trade and economic opportunities to cover topics such as OTI-2, transboundary pollution, issues that advance is needed to have a successful binational business community. Next slide, please. These are some of the federal agencies we have met with in the past and have reached out to request meetings with them to address our regional priorities and objectives. In order to address, for example, in order to address border infrastructure and efficiencies like the cross-border trolley project that is being promoted by Cordova Corporation, we plan on meeting with both transportation and customs officials. Another topic, the head of the Mexican section of the International Boundary and Water Commission, or SILA in Mexico, have confirmed their participation, and we have also reached out to Conagua and Semarnat, other agencies that can address the topic of the Tijuana River Valley transboundary pollution. And for other topics, we will also be provided a brief virtual message from the Minister of Economy herself and an in-person meeting with the ministry's head of the Productive Development Unit. Next slide, please. And something that we're really excited and looking forward to this year is that we will be hosted by U.S. Ambassador Ken Salazar at his residence for a reception. And this will be the second time we meet with a U.S. ambassador in one of these trips. Next slide, please. So in the past, over 90 business and community leaders from both sides of the border have joined us in our 2019 delegation trip, and they raised support for policies and projects that will continue to strengthen our cross-border communities. On the 2019 delegation trip, 5 mayors jumped on board along with 24 companies, 2 council generals, the state of Baja representatives, and 8 regional council members. Next slide, please. And to date, to this year's trip, we have San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria, Council President Sean Elo Rivera, Assembly Member Chris Ward, Assembly Member David Alvarez, and Congressman Scott Peters, who have confirmed their participation. And we're excited and expecting to hear more back from elected officials to confirm in the following weeks. And on these trips, we've had some pretty amazing success stories, which include business who have gained clients and secured contracts. But overall, this is a great way for delegates to expand their networks and to further and foster their friendships. Next slide, please. And this year, we expect increased media at local and national levels since it's our first trip back since 2019. And due to the political climate, of course, there are also 2 press conferences planned with our regional mayors and another with the Senate, which we are in the process of confirming. Next slide, please. And this slide, I just wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors who will be taking advantage of being recognized through promotional materials, speaking opportunities, and other opportunities to provide product samples or promotional collateral in the meetings and in the trip overall. And these packages will continue to be available in the following months if anyone is interested. Next slide. And unfortunately, there's no such thing as a free lunch. However, our pricing includes all meals, meetings, and bus transportation. And for planning purposes, most delegates arrive in the afternoon on Sunday, October 24th, prior to the welcome reception at 7 p.m. And the trip will conclude around 12 p.m. on Wednesday on October 26th. And we have partnered once again with the Four Seasons in Mexico City and have secured a special room rate where reservations can be made online or through the hotel's online website. And of course, delegates will be invited to attend a pre-trip meeting to receive full information and updates on the trip. So that's it I'll have for you all today. And for those who have registered, thank you so much. And if you have not, we are looking forward for you to join us. And please feel free to contact me or anyone else from the Chamber team for further information.
Thank you, Jimena, very much. Do we have any public comments on that particular agenda item?
There are no public comments on this item.
And any member comments on that particular item? So I have one comment. Jimena, you're going to want to correct that slide that talks about who's attending to include Councilmember Bill Sankey from Coronado,
Perfect.
Please.
I'll write that down for
Big
the
name.
next presentation.
I will share that the networking that goes on at that meeting is wonderful. Four Seasons is a fabulous place to stay, but the real impact of the event is on the interactions with the Mexican compatriots. I will share that I walked down a hallway with a Mexican senator and was able to personally lobby him about the Tijuana sewage issue. He listened. We talked about his condo in the shores and where his grandchildren swim might be polluted. He might want to think about helping us out. And over the years, there's been a sea change in the attitude of the Mexican government on this particular problem. We're going to sign agreements related to the border crossing on this trip as well, momentous agreements, MOUs. So there's a lot of good that's going to happen at this trip, and I would urge everybody who's got the time and the inclination to join the Chamber. They do such great things for our region, and this trip is definitely one of them. Okay, item number 6, improving air quality in the San Diego International Border Region. We all know that the border impacts of traffic are significant when it comes to pollution. Our next item is hugely important along those lines. The Air Pollution Control District took an initiative to develop a border community air monitoring and emission reduction plan, and we have Domingo Vigil with us on Zoom, the director of the APCD, to help us understand what's going on with this program and learn more about it. Domingo?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, members of the Borders Committee and everybody who's with us today. My name is Domingo Vigil. I'm a Deputy Director with the San Diego Air Pollution Control District, or SDAPCD. It's a pleasure to be here with you to share information regarding our efforts to improve air quality at the San Diego International Border Community through the Community Air Protection Program. Next slide, please. California Assembly Bill 617 established the Community Air Protection Program. This is a statewide program administered by the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, and requires new community-focused and community-driven actions to go beyond existing state and regional programs to reduce air pollution and improve public health in communities that experience a disproportionate burden from exposure to air pollution. The Community Air Protection Program requires community air monitoring, community emissions reduction plans, and incentive funding to deploy clean technologies in the most impacted areas. The SDAPCD administers the Community Air Protection Program locally, and for the past few years, we have been working with the Portside community, which includes Sherman Heights, Logan Heights, Barrio Logan, and West National City, to address air quality challenges in that community. Most recently, SDAPCD expanded this program to the San Diego International Border Community. We submitted a nomination to of the International Border Community to CARB in 2018, but at that time, this community was not selected to participate in the program. In late 2021, and with the added support of partner organizations and agencies such as Sandag, the nomination was resubmitted to CARB, and the International Border Community was selected in February of the present year to participate in the program. The Community Air Protection Program is also in line with the guiding principles of the Border 2025 program, a US-Mexico sponsored program that prioritizes environmental equity and addresses disproportionate environmental impacts in border communities. Next slide, please. The selected community spans approximately 23.5 square miles along the US-Mexico border. This community has an approximate population of 64,400 and includes about 8 schools, 1 senior care facility, 5 daycare centers, and 7 hospitals or clinics. The community covers San Isidro and Otay Mesa East and is located at the US-Mexico international border. Therefore, emission sources from the Tijuana metropolitan area likely add to this community's air quality burden. Next slide, please. These maps show the border community census tracts highlighted by their overall CalEnviroscreen percentile score, as per its latest version 4.0. CalEnviroscreen is a mapping tool developed by the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and the California Environmental Protection Agency that helps identify California communities that are most affected by sources of pollution and that are often especially vulnerable to pollution's effects. CalEnviroscreen uses environmental, health, and socioeconomic information to produce a numerical score for each census tract in the state. The criteria used by this screening tool includes levels of diesel pollution, rates of emergency room visits for asthma symptoms, and levels of poverty, among others. The census tracts you see on the map and the residents who live within them face significant disadvantages, which is reflected in their high percentile scores. The darker the shade of orange, the higher the percentile score. Some of these census tracts find themselves in the 99th and 92nd percentile for exposure to PM 2.5 and diesel particulate matter, respectively. Residents also face significant health challenges for asthma, cardiovascular disease, cancer risk, and cancer burden that are all above the 75th percentile. And poverty and underemployment scores for some of these are in the 93rd percentile and 96th percentile, respectively. Next slide, please. To have a more complete understanding of air quality and its impacts in the community, SDAPCD has conducted air quality monitoring at the San Isidro Fire Station and Donovan State Prison. We are also working on establishing a third air quality monitoring site at the California Highway Patrol Inspection Facility in Otay Mesa, a few yards away from the international border fence. As the APCD is also partnering with the California Air Resources Board, community organizations such as Casa Familiar, who has advocated for improved air quality in the community for many years, and with San Diego State University School of Public Health, who has been involved in conducting health and air quality research in the international border community for many years. In addition, APCD has gathered input from community residents, businesses, and other stakeholders to develop a community profile that will inform the development of a community air monitoring plan and a community emissions reduction plan. Next slide, please. A key component of the program is the creation of a community steering committee to guide the development and implementation of the community emission reduction plan and community air monitoring plan. The International Border Community Steering Committee includes a majority of community residents, as well as other government agencies such as cities, planning agencies such as Sandag, and transportation agencies, local research institutions, community-based organizations, and industry groups. Committee members provide input and vote on issues related to air quality in their community, and also request and receive information on implementation of the program. Community Steering Committee meetings take place monthly and are open to the general public. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the feedback and input that we've received from community members through the steering committee meetings. Just to summarize some of these comments, under mobile sources, some of the main concerns for the community include border crossing traffic and long wait times that impact air pollution in the community. Also, heavy-duty truck traffic, traffic generated by warehouses, traffic generated by the outlets at Las Americas, emissions generated by Customs and Border Protection off-road activity. Regarding impacts from stationary sources, community members are mostly concerned about toxic emissions, specifically metals. Regarding land use, some of the concerns relate to the ports of entry and the separation between people and vehicles, expansion of warehouses, need for improved mobility like walking and cycling, safe places to exercise, and there's interest in mitigation strategies such as urban greening and physical barriers to separate air pollution from sensitive receptors. Other concerns include odors from the Tijuana River Valley and their potential health effects. There's interest in additional monitoring at the Tijuana River Valley to understand some of these pollutants. And also there's interest in mitigation strategies such as air purifiers for homes. Next slide, please. To highlight some of the progress that we've had to date, we have been focusing mainly in engaging with the community and providing presentations on air quality matters, educating community members and inviting them to provide their input and feedback into the development of the program. We formed a community steering committee, as I mentioned previously. We have also been conducting air quality monitoring, and we're partnering with other organizations such as San Diego State University and Casa Familiar, who have been conducting pilot programs in the community as well. We are partnering with the California Air Resources Board to develop an emissions inventory for the community to better understand the sources of pollution. Also, we have been working with CARB, Sandag, and APCD on refining activity estimates for on-road mobile sources to have better data that can inform emission reduction strategies for the community. Other ongoing collaborations include obtaining data from air quality monitoring activities at the U.S. Consulate in Mesa de Otay in Tijuana, and collaborating on data sharing with local and state government agencies in Mexico regarding air sensor networks in Tijuana. Next slide, please. This slide shows the general timeline for the project. On the left, you can see a column with all the required elements for implementing this program, and then a timeline at the top. From the inception of the program in the international border area, we've been working with the Community Steering Committee and establishing a public process for participation. We are collecting information to develop a community profile and a technical foundation that will inform the best strategies to reduce air pollution in the community. As we move through the fall and winter, we will be conducting additional studies to identify emission reduction targets, proximity-based goals, and develop emission and exposure reduction strategies. During the same time, we will be working with the state and local agencies on developing an enforcement process and techniques that can enhance air quality, compliance of air quality regulations in the community. As the spring comes in, we will be looking at implementing, developing an implementation schedule for the emission reduction strategies that I identified, and also identifying required metrics to measure success. Towards the end of this process, we will have to develop a CEQA analysis to make sure that we're complying with the California Environmental Quality Act. The goal is to submit a proposed community emissions reduction plan and community air monitoring plan to the San Diego APCD board by the fall of 2023, and then submit the programs and the plans for the approval of the California Air Resources Board. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive report. It encompasses a lot of stuff we've heard at this committee already about networks of air monitors south of the border as well, with online ability for folks to go online and see the current status of the problem. And we know it's there, and there are many ways to focus on it. This particular project is doing a nice job of that. Do we have any public comments on that item?
Yes, we do have a public comment from Corina Contreras.
Go ahead, Karina.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Karina Contreras. I'm here in my capacity as Transportation Policy Advocate for Climate Action Campaign. And I just wanted to make a quick comment that we are 100% in support of making sure that we can do more air quality measurements throughout our border region. So the expansion of more sensors, and especially this aspect of being able to interact with these different sensors, almost in a citizen scientist type of way, is extremely valuable resource to the community. And it's especially important to be able to take a look at different geographic areas along the border region to see if any mitigation strategies are actually mitigating the air pollution the levels that we currently have, which are not good for our community. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm excited to see this plan roll out, and for people to be able to be engaged in the data. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katrina, very much for your contribution. Any other public comments on this item?
This concludes public comments.
Thank you very much. Member comments now? Anybody have something to add? Go ahead, Jack.
Thank you, Domingo. And I also serve on the APCD board. So, Domingo, I wonder if you can say a few words with regards to, I guess, mobile sources from sites that we have a chance to regulate locally with APCD. Our actions or our potential actions in the future to deal with indirect sources from our stationary sources. That's one. And the other is, I think I read recently the CARB took some action on trucks and diesel trucks earlier this week. Maybe you could give us some news on that. And lastly, I know Cal Environmental Screening gets its data partly from health records. So I'm glad that we're monitoring the actual air, but what is our progress in our own agencies monitoring health effects? That is, the number of people who may be suffering from asthma or cancer that we believe is directly affected by air quality. So sorry for those three large areas, Domingo, but I think you know those areas well.
Thank you, Member Xu, for the question. Just to address your initial question regarding mobile sources, mobile sources are the largest source of air pollution in the region, and those are under the California Air Resources Board's purview for regulating. However, we have a memorandum of understanding with the California Air Resources Board to be able to enforce some of those regulations here locally and make sure that that mobile sources such as trucks follow the rules to reduce air pollution. We have also entered into additional agreements to expand our enforcement capabilities beyond trucks to include hovercraft in other sources as well. So that's an important partnership that we have with the California Air Resources Board that is actually very unique to San Diego. It's not something that is done widely in other districts across California. So we are very proud of that component. As far as, I'm trying to recall the other elements of your question, but you mentioned the California Air Resources Board taking action or us taking a look at other indirect sources. So in the coming months, we will be working on options to develop an indirect source rule for San Diego County that will also help us address some of the impacts that mobile sources have that are more related to land use when it comes to impacts from warehousing activities, et cetera. And that's going to be very beneficial for both of the communities that we have under this program currently, which is the Portside community and the international border community. And I believe those were all your questions. If there's anything else that I missed.
Two more. One was on collecting data from health records as to, it's probably part of the CalEnviro screening mapping, is those areas that are red and or orange, as well as yellow. What's our data, and maybe Sandag, I'm trying to get Sandag to be interested in that data, acquiring health records, as well as what APC now does with their air monitoring.
Thank you. Yes, so as you mentioned, a lot of that information we have access to via the CalEnviro Screen tool. However, we also look at additional partnerships with the county's Health and Human Services Agency and other organizations that might have more granular data with respect to the specific communities where we're trying to create partnerships. As part of our steering committee meetings, we invite medical experts to talk to the community about their concerns and some of the data that we have for that particular community. So we're in constant communications with those stakeholders that are more on the health side of things to better understand that type of information and better inform the type of strategies that are going to be included in these plans to improve air quality.
Great. And the last point, I should have probably separated them so you could remember each one. CARB made some changes to, or proposed changes to zero emission trucks in the near future, similar to what they just did with regards to, or the state, what they just did with regards to zero emission vehicles. How that, do you think that would affect cross-border vehicles in the future as CARB asks for all trucks, essentially, heavy-duty trucks as well as light-duty trucks to be zero emission?
So the requirements that CARB has on trucks apply to all trucks operating in the state of California, regardless of their other place of origin. So that is something that will certainly benefit the communities in California. And because of that, some of the areas where these trucks are operated outside of California will also be benefiting from those types of requirements that have more stringent measures to reduce pollution from specifically from diesel trucks.
So that's 2045, I thought. Is that the mark?
Correct.
Right. Well, maybe we'll be around to see that happen.
Jack, you're an eternal optimist. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Councilmember Vivian Moreno. This is her district. She takes very, very seriously issues in her district, and she's a champion for projects just like this. Seeing that in CalEnviro screen map with the red on San Ysidro is really concerning to those of us around the governing and policy worlds here, that we need to do more to help out regions just like that. And I know that Vivian would be very supportive of this effort and efforts just like it for her district. district. And so I did not want to leave that. One other thing, I've been informed that Domingo Vigil, it was a former intern here at Sandag years ago, and it's great to see Domingo achieve professionally, and we're really happy that he was with us here today. Domingo, congratulations on your professional success, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Willie. Thank you for the invitation.
Claro que sí. Okay, that concludes that particular agenda item. Moving on to our next item. The Otay Mesa East Port of Entry. We've heard a lot about it on the news. We've been party to it for years and years here at this committee. Significant headway has been made lately. We had federal officials, state officials all here for ribbon cutting a couple weeks back. At the Chamber Mexico City event, we're going to be signing an MOU related to this particular project. We're going to hear some very specific report about a very successful negotiation project. Gustavo, you talked earlier about the three legs of the stool being Caltrans, Sandag, and the state government. But this particular stool has four legs, an international relationship with Mexico. And it's often in government that we get to toot our horn and say this is a win-win. Well, having received the brief yesterday that Mario is going to share with us today, I can honestly tell you this is a win-win. And we'll be asked for an action item to recommend this to the board of directors at the conclusion of this report. I ask you to look at it with critical eyes, but know that a lot of work has gone into this. It's come a long way down in evolving into something that both participants on either side of the border are 100% behind, and we're going to hear about the specifics of it now. So Mario, Andre, and Victor, please begin your report.
See, can you guys hear me? There we go. Hi, well, thank you. And, I'm Mario Orso. I'm Chief Deputy District Director and the lead for Otay Mesa East for both Sandag and Caltrans. With me, it's Andre Duchaney and Victor Xu. We will be providing an update on the project, on the financial strategies, as well as the Memorandum of Understanding. And I'm hitting the clicker and it's not working, so maybe, oh, there we go. And if not, we'll just say next, right? Yeah, I think the battery is gone. Well, so anyway, let's start here. So we'll be providing a project update. And like I said, Andre will be talking about the financial strategy, Victor, the toll revenue sharing agreement, and then we'll move forward into the recommendation that we're requesting for the Borders Committee. Next. Oh, there we go. So, pretty much you've seen this slide a couple of times, but each time the blue, which is the concluded items, is what we keep working. This project is looked as a corridor, meaning the roadways, the accesses, the ancillary facilities, and the port of entry are all one single project. We've moved forward pretty much with the project from west to east, where we have now finalized the entire transportation facilities. We are concluding all the transportation facilities, and you're going to see some pictures of some of the openings that we have had. Up to date, we've invested $592 million out of an estimated project cost of $1.1 billion, and Andre will talk a little bit more about that. We are very happy of the infra grant and that was mentioned, and pretty much my update is going to be going faster because Victoria did such a great job presenting it. But I do want to highlight, we mentioned the project team, the project leads, but there's two young ladies here today, Mariela and Andrea, and they're the ones who write the grants, and they're the ones, raise your hands. They're the ones who make it happen. It's pretty easy for us to stand here, talk about the project, but they're the ones who have meetings at midnight, virtually going over the documents, going over everything. So they do put quite a bit of sweat into this. They are working on a state grant now that's going to be upcoming, SB1 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. So that I cannot highlight the importance of the entire team, but those two young ladies really deserve quite a bit of recognition. We are focused now on the port of entry, the design, the facilities of it. And, that's pretty important that we're working on that. We have heard you, Councilmember Xu, on a lot of your concerns and what even the presentation before has been brought up. So on the design, we are looking into a facility that is more environmentally friendly and looking at strategies for lower emissions in the area. So here you're seeing some of the connectors that we've concluded, some of the items. This is, okay, great, thanks. The connectors we concluded just recently. This is, I'm not sure, but I think this is one of the few, if not the only area in San Diego where we have 3 highways getting together, connecting, and we have concluded this, the 125 connectors to the 905 and SR11. So here's the event that we had earlier this summer for the opening of the last connector, which is the southbound to westbound connectors that basically concludes all the connections in that area. We've also concluded and opened the Enrico Ferment Interchange, and it's another item that it's important to highlight because it serves the existing facility. It reduces congestion of the existing border facility that reduces congestion for the trucks. This interchange, which is called Divergent Diamond, has won multiple awards, and it was named Project of the Year by the Institute of the Transportation Engineers in Western United States, not just San Diego, in the entire Western United States. So that was pretty cool that we did that and that the team achieved that, the engineering and construction teams. We keep moving towards the port of entry. This is the final interchange that we had a couple of months ago or a year ago, and this is what the final product is looking. So like I said, we are laser focused in the port of entry, developing the port of entry, financing the port of entry, achieving those agreements that the port of entry requires. And like Victoria said, last month, we had the groundbreaking for the site preparation of the port of entry site. We're bringing in new utilities and we're preparing the site so we can come in and put on it the buildings for the actual POE as well as the companion highway patrol waste station facility. Something that's very important, and it kind of connects with the prior presentation, is that the success of this project is not the brick and mortar, is the technology of it and the strategies that we think about it. So right now, the idea is to have, well, the idea on this project is variable pricing to manage congestion. We are targeting a 20-minute average wait time. But like we've said before, we can't achieve that if we don't have an accurate border wait time system on all the existing borders. Currently, we do have an existing southbound border wait time system operating, and not a lot of people know about it, that we're measuring wait times into Mexico now for about 2 years. And we are deploying the equipment to measure northbound border wait times at San Isidro, Otay Mesa, in the future Otay Mesa East. In addition, in that project, we are also bringing in about 15 to 20 miles of fiber optics from downtown San Diego to San Isidro, Otay Mesa, and Otay Mesa East to be able to manage all the new technology. Within that project also, we partner with what was mentioned, Casa Familiar in San Diego State, for those air monitors. So this project that you see in the Otay Mesa East project is actually contributing to the installation of air monitors in the border region. And the border wait time system is going to help us determine if there is a correlation between air quality and border wait times. and to develop strategies. Something also that we're looking in the port of entry design is to be in line with the Sustainable Freight Action Plan in looking into, like I said, basically low emissions or zero emission strategies like appointment services, green lanes, that we're looking into it. So it's really in line. And as a side comment that wasn't in my notes that I was thinking, we just had the Commission of the Californias meeting where we're also looking into strategies of zero emission vehicles in the requirements that we would have. And I'm not saying requirements imposed, but the infrastructure that's going to be required on both sides of the border to realize that 2045 target and even that 2035 target that there is for other trucks going into seaports areas like that. So it is all connected, as you could see. But going back to Otay Mesa East, the border wait time system is something that we are developing, and we're hoping later this year to put in live online, both a northbound and a southbound border wait time system, and develop an application that San Diego State has also given us the blueprint of it. So we also partner with San Diego State on figuring out the concept of what that application would look like. Now, we couldn't be talking about Otay Mesa East and not addressing where our Mexican partners are. And Consul General Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez is here also, and he can reinforce or correct me if I'm wrong in any of the items. We have been partnering with both the Infrastructure, Communications, and Transportation Ministry, the new Customs Authority in Mexico, as well as the Department of Defense Infrastructure Department, which is going to be tasked to build the port of entry and the roadway access. Mexico is getting ready to begin their work on this project. We've been communicated that they are now fully funded, and they're pretty much almost finalized with certain minor details in their right-of-way acquisition. We will also notify that by the first week of October, they will be relocating the power towers that cross the border in order to start the construction of the access roadway. I hope I did justice on the update there, Council General. So that's the update on the project from, let's call it a brick and mortar perspective, but follow the money, right? In order to be able to construct the port of entry, we're going to need to finance this project with TIFIA bonds and grants. And we're also going to have to develop multiple array of agreements, which one of them is the revenue sharing agreement that we're bringing into you. So I'm going to pass it on to Andre so he can discuss the financial strategy.
Thank you, Mario. And as Mario said, I'm Andre Duchaney. I'm the CFO for Sandag. And earlier at your April meeting, we actually did present a financial strategy. Today, I just want to give you an update as to where we stand today. So I'm going to be touching on our investment grade traffic and revenue study results. There's some updates to that, our project funding requirements, where we are with that, an update on our debt service coverage, and also the flow of funds. I think before I get into the slides, maybe to also remind you of some of the relevant background information. So at Sandag, currently, we have 3 bond indentures. One is for Sandag, which is specifically backed by the FFGA that we got for the Midcoast. The second is the San Diego County Regional Transportation, or the Transnet, which is backed by a 0.5% sales tax. And the third is the SR 125, and we basically receive toll revenues to pay for that. So the Otay Mesa East will be the 4th indenture that we have, and it's most similar to the SR 125. And actually, our experience for that project is very relevant for this one. That being said, this has been the most challenging credit that we've dealt with, only because it's not just a local project, but it also has state and federal agencies involved. And as Vice Chair Sankey said, we also have a foreign government that we're dealing with as well. But today we're pleased to say that we can, possibly check the one checklist, and that is one of the many agreements that we have to get done, and that is a toll revenue sharing agreement with Mexico. But just like any financial deal that we bring to you. We assemble a team, and PFM is our financial advisors on the team. Barclays is our underwriters. And with me today is Victor Shu. He is a partner with Norton Rose and Fulbright. He's our bond and disclosure counsel, and he'll be getting into the agreement that we have a little bit later. So again, just like SR 125 at OTAI Mesa East, we are only looking at the toll revenues to pledge any other debt for this, and there's been no other Sandag revenues that will be used. So one of the most important questions that investors have is this a standalone financially feasible project? And so part of the team that we hired is CDM Smith, who did an investment grade traffic and revenue study, which really is the basis for our entire financial model. And so what this chart here in front of you shows is that the revenues that CDM Smith said the project should generate through 2065. And the reason we show through 2065 is basically that's when we should pay off all the debt. And you can see the ramp up is fairly slow. In 2025, when the facility opens, it's 22.3 million. In 2035, 10 years from then, it's 84.3, so on and so forth, to 2065, when it really grows all the way to $326 million on an annual basis. The increase, by the way, in the toll revenues that you see is not just because of the increased traffic volume, but it's also because the tolls are dynamically priced. And the objective, I think, as Mario showed earlier, is to make sure that we don't have any more than a 20-minute wait time. Now, clearly, the amount of revenues being generated is significant. However, it's the early ramp-up years that is a major concern here. And that is, do we have sufficient revenues to pay off the debt in the first 5 years or so, which I'll touch on a little bit later. But for now, I just want to look at our updated project costs and our funding requirements. And focusing on the left side, we show the total cost of the project on the US side, which is just over $1.13 billion. And in Mexico, it is $250 million. Unfortunately, that number has grown on the US side, but that's mostly due to inflationary costs, which I think something that we're seeing in all aspects of our lives today. But if you just focus on the left side, on the numbers on blue, on the US side, we have actually paid for $144 million of the right-of-way. We have paid for the roadway, that's $425 million. The red items are the ones that, and by the way, just those numbers I think were on Mario's charts earlier. 51% of that money has come from federal sources, 40% from state funding, and only 9% so far we've used of local funds. Now, looking at the numbers in red, what we still have to pay for, we have to pay for the port of entry itself. We have to pay for the commercial vehicle enforcement facility, which is $59 million, and the ITS for $39 million. A total of $568 million is still outstanding. So if we look at the right side, the funding strategy, I think we've all heard the infra grant that we got, $150 million. Obviously, we're very excited about that. That really kind of pushes us, I think, towards the finish line. We're also looking for TCEP grant and other sources for approximately $120 million. I'm sure that Mario and his team, just as they were successful with the 150, will get the 120 for us. So really what is outstanding for me and the financial team is to go get the TIFIA loan for approximately $243 million, and the net bond proceeds that after the expenses and some of the reserve funds have been funded, that'll be approximately $55 million of funding that we'll need there. So as I showed earlier, the total revenues are $6.8 billion, a tremendous amount of money through 2065. And ultimately, the US side is to get $3.4 billion, Mexico's to get $3.4 billion. But I also mentioned earlier, it's that slow ramp-up period that is kind of the challenge for us. So as we've worked with our financial team of PFM and Barclays, and we actually have already had preliminary meetings with rating agencies, Fitch, S&P, and Moody's, we all know that we need to get an investment grade rating of at least BBB- to sell these bonds and also to get a TIFIA loan. And to achieve that BBB rating, we need to get at least a 2 times debt service coverage ratio, which means that for every $1 of debt, we need to get at least $2 in revenue. And one of the things that our financial model has showed us is that we need at least 60% of the revenues up front for us to achieve that. But then ultimately, we would be sharing that, 50-50 split with our Mexican partners. But one thing, again, being that this toll facility is a really great asset for both the US and Mexico. Our Mexican partners have been gracious enough to say, you need the additional revenue up front. We'll be willing to give it to you, but so long as there's on an annual basis, we'll review to make sure that we can give them the 10% back. Now, Victor, a little bit later, will be getting into the details of the agreement. So if we look at what we're kind of calling the modified 50-50% split, this chart basically looks at the flow of funds. So we get the gross toll revenues. Unfortunately, there's always some kind of leakage at a toll crossing. Then there's operating and maintenance costs. So we'll get the net revenues. Initially, as this chart shows at the top right side, 60% of it will throw to Sandag initially. That's for us to pay our senior and subordinate debt payments, as well as our, to fund our reserve accounts, the renewal and replacement costs. And once we are able to do that on an annual basis, we'll take a look at it, and 10% will flow back to our Mexican partners. So next month, we are re-engaging with the 3 rating agencies, with Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, with our updated plan of finance, with our updated costs, updated revenues. Our goal, again, is to get at least 2 investment grade ratings of BBB-. And if we're able to do that, then we can really engage with the TIFIA office, the Department of Transportation. And once we're able to lock in a TIFIA loan, then we will head over to Wall Street and get issue bonds and get the final proceeds that we need. So with that, I will turn it over to Victor now, who will describe the proposed revenue sharing agreement.
Thank you, Andre. As Andre mentioned, I'm Victor Hsu, a partner with Norton Rose Fulbright, and we are Sandag's primary outside legal counsel for this project. It's been a great project. We've been representing Sandag with personnel from not only our Los Angeles office, but also personnel in Washington, D.C. and Mexico City. So I'd just like to discuss the existing June 2021 Memorandum of Understanding that was signed last year. This MOU presents a framework for future binding agreements to develop and operate the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project, Mesa de Otay Dos on the Mexican side. And the agreements include several with the government of Mexico. There's the Binational Intelligent Transportation System Agreement, ITS, the agreement covering sharing of toll revenue, which is what we're presenting today, a binational financial strategy agreement, and other agreements that are contemplated in order for us to construct, operate, maintain the project, and also cover toll governance, toll policy, and toll setting. One primary aspect of this project is that Mexico is giving up the opportunity to collect tolls on its side of the border. Typically, you'd have Mexico collecting tolls for northbound traffic, and the US, Sandag, collecting tolls for southbound traffic. Instead of that structure, typical status quo structure, we're having Mexico agree not to collect tolls on their side of the border. And instead, Sandag would collect tolls for both northbound and southbound traffic at a single point of toll collection on SR 11. So just to go over some of the key terms of the toll revenue sharing agreement that we're presenting, the parties include Sandag and Mexico's Ministry of Infrastructure, Communications, and Transportation, or SICT, it's a Mexican acronym. The term of this agreement will be the later of 40 years, or when Sandag's bonds, TIFIA loan, and obligation to Mexico to cover its 10% that they're giving up at the outset are paid in full. The point of this toll revenue sharing agreement is to ensure that there are sufficient revenues to secure the debt financing that we'll need at the outset to complete this project. The agreement will also cover toll collection. As I described earlier, Sandag will be the entity solely collecting tolls at a single collection point for both northbound and southbound traffic, and Mexico will not be collecting a toll during the agreement's term. Just to go into a little bit more detail on the flow of funds that Andre described earlier. So the agreement does mention that it is an equitable 50-50 split. In the beginning, though, that split is represented by this chart. There's actually gross toll revenues coming at the outset, and then Sandag would pay operations and maintenance costs, leading to net toll revenues that will then be distributed on a 60-40 basis, 60% to Sandag and 40% to Mexico initially. After satisfying senior and subordinate debt service and reserve requirements, the residual would be applied to repay Mexico the 10% that they had originally given up on an annual basis to the extent that monies are available. That will be paid at the end of each year. If sufficient revenues are not available at the end of the year, then Mexico's 10% share, whatever is not paid, will remain an obligation that will accrue interest and that will be paid in future years as the project ramps up and generates more revenue. And before I leave that, let me just go back to that slide. After 10 years, the agreement provides that there will be a testing of debt service coverage on a pro forma basis. And if that testing indicates that a 50-50 revenue split would have yielded 2 times coverage, both going backwards for 2 years and also going forward for the rest of the project, then at that point, the 60-40 modified split will revert to a pure 50-50 revenue split between Sandag and Mexico. Another key term of the toll revenue sharing agreement concerns toll setting. Sandag's board has the sole authority to set tolls, but in this process, they will be advised by a binational working group that's created and described under this agreement. It's going to be made up of representatives of both Sandag and SICT, and it'll advise the board on toll setting and toll policy. As part of this advice, Sandag will also be offering SICT an advisory position on the board related to matters of toll setting specifically. And this position is in addition to the non-voting position that Mexico currently has on Sandag's board of directors. So I think that is our summary of the key terms of the toll revenue sharing agreement. I will kick it back to Mario and Andre.
Sure. Thank you. Well, I think one important element also is, as we're sharing the revenues, right, we need somebody to keep the money and be equitable on the distribution based on the terms. And it's important to highlight that the North American Development Bank has agreed to be the custodial institution for those funds. And the NAD Bank, or North American Development Bank, for those who may not know it, is a binational owned public institution, financial institution, where both Mexico and the US governments are the owners or of that institution, and it was created for NAFTA purposes, and they have financed environmental and infrastructure projects, and they've graciously agreed to be the custodial, and it just makes sense, right? It's a publicly run institution. The board of directors has members of the Mexican federal government, members of the U.S. federal government, as well as assigned members like Denise Duchaney is in their board of directors, somebody that we know here in our region. So they've agreed to be the custodial for the funds. So today we're here to ask for your recommendation for the board's committee. It's asked to recommend to the board of directors to adopt a resolution 2023-05 approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of the toll revenue sharing agreement with the Mexico's Ministry of Infrastructure, Communications, and Transportation. So that's the whole purpose that we're here, asking you to recommend for the board of directors the approval of this agreement. We have spent 8 months in the negotiations of such an agreement, and we feel that it's an equitable and good agreement for both sides. Thank you, and we're open for any questions.
Tremendous report. I want to definitely recognize Andre and Victor. Having been through a few bond proposals in this room, that's the most understandable report I've received of the 4 or 5 I've been through. And I also, you mentioned, Mario, Senator Denise, retired California Senator Denise Duchaney. She was responsible for SB 1486, which gave Sandag the tolling authority that makes this whole project possible. She hasn't been in government for quite a while, but she stays very engaged in the region through her work at UCSD. I'm not sure if she's going to be part of public comments, but anyway, I want to make sure that she got recognized as well. I'm glad you brought her up. And you also mentioned earlier Maria and her team on the grant side, so thank you very much for doing that. Public comments, please, Madam Clerk.
There are no comments on this item.
No public comments, okay. Well, Denise, we recognize you if you're with us in spirit. I was also remiss when, after the meeting began, Ambassador Carlos Gutierrez joined us, and I should have recognized him when he entered the room and sat down, so I take that one on me. As a personal friend and also a colleague that I value very much, I'd like you to kick off the comments tonight from just now for the committee.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you for the very interesting report that you just presented and shared with us few days back. I would only like to make 3 brief comments. One, as a non-voting member of the board of directors of Sandag, I would respectfully and kindly recommend this committee to recommend the board the approval of the resolution, because it will strengthen relations between the US and Mexico. Secondly, I would like to congratulate Mario and Andre and the whole team for the work you've done. It shows that Sandag was well prepared. Sandag and Caltrans were both prepared for this challenge. And the best evidence that we have for that is the grant by the U.S. Department of Transportation of $150 million that you're going to receive, and that will put you, that will allow you all to turn around the corner in terms of fundraising. And finally, my third comment is that for Mexico, this is a top priority in infrastructure. We are moving fast, and I'm happy to report that we are now at the stage in which we are consulting with Mexico City about dates for having a groundbreaking ceremony on the Mexican side, similar to the one we have just a few weeks ago on the US side. I'm looking forward to it. I think we all. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ambassador. You bring a certain amount of gravitas to this table that none of us have. You actually represent a government of the world, and those words come straight from Mexico City at your capital, and the investment that you guys are about to make and the progress you've been making of late has not been missed by all of us, and we're tremendously excited about the project, and seeing this come together as a cooperative joint border project has just been so rewarding personally, and I know for all of us at this committee. So thank you for your remarks tonight, or today. They came straight from your government, and that means a lot. Jesus, you have some remarks?
Yeah, I've got a few. First off, congratulations. I was in attendance at the previous meeting of board of directors, and I like that that word that is new to my vocabulary, infragrant, that Gustavo mentioned, and I believe our CEO also mentioned for Sandag quite a bit. So I come from Imperial County, so when you mention $1 million, it makes my mouth water. So when you say 150 million, well, we'll leave it at that. So congratulations to yourself, to the team, to the lady underwriters in the back, to everybody that worked on this project. As a customs broker by trade, it's an added dimension of the asset that this is gonna bring to the entire region. Not just Otay Mesa, not just San Diego, not just Tijuana, but Baja California and California. So again, because of my other, the other hat that I wear, I really do see the added value to this project as it grows the regional economy. So my hat's off to all of you. Now, not being a negative Nancy, but I will be, if we could pull up maybe, I think it's page 4 of the presentation. It was basically a cross-border overhead shot. And this is what I'm a little worried about, and I'm glad that our counsel is here. And he's already alluded to this, no, further back. Yes, but it's an actual aerial of that specific picture. Is there a real aerial, or is that it? Okay, then we can go back to that one. And what my question is, again, given my background, I've traveled the green area on more than one occasion, and it's basically raw land with a couple of hills that need to be chopped up, and it's costing us quite a bit of money to chop those hills up. But on the Mexican side, the orange is fully developed. It's fully developed. So when you look at it from the US over there, you see a developed city. And again, having been on the other side of the umbrella in Mexico, I also see the headache that this development will cause on the Mexican side. And given the very aggressive December 2023, am I correct in that date, December 2023? 24, which is... oh,
that's the one you wanted.
That's the, exactly. And you see all that development. So I first off, number one, it's very challenging in any place to utilize the word effectively and legally eminent domain. It's even more challenging in Mexico. So again, we're looking at December 2024. So if you could go into briefly some detail as to, do you see any headaches with the eminent domain aspect of this project, given the development on the Tijuana-Otay Mesa side of the border that requires the spacing needed, not just for vehicular traffic, but for commercial traffic?
Sure, I'll be brief, and then I'll ask Mario to complement my response. I love these pictures because they are pretty consistent and constant throughout the border. If you take a picture of Friendship Park right now, it's the same story. On the US side, you see the park, the wilderness. On the Mexican side, you see the Plaza de Toros and the restaurants and the beach and the people making noise and living their lives. It's perhaps part of our reality in this binational region. I'm happy to report that on the Mexican side, in terms of securing the space needed both to the roads that will take us to the actual premises of the port of entry, as well as regarding the land that is needed for the port of entry, 90+% is already solved. We don't have the same eminent domain tools that the law provides you here in this country, but we also have our own protections of public interest through federal and state law. And I think that every time I ask, they tell me 90-something% is already solved. I think it's mostly a matter of agreeing with a couple of owners that are very close to the border on the two corners. I'm sure that Mario can point them more precisely than I could. But believe me, This is top priority for Mexico. It has the intervention of 3 levels of government right now. It's in the papers almost every day. And the density or chaos, whatever you want to call it, that you see now is not going to be an obstacle once the groundbreaking ceremony is scheduled and we start bringing the construction crews to do this and do this fast. While we were at the meeting, I was changing messages with my colleague, the U.S. consul in Tijuana, asking them for his help to grant U.S. visa to a group of engineers that have to come on a regular basis to deal with their counterparts on the U.S. side, precisely because of construction concerns and the need for coordination among experts. I hope this time I didn't say anything wrong that you have to correct me.
Mario, do you have anything to add?
A couple of comments, technical comments. If you see the odd shape of the port of entry on the Mexican side, it's not by coincidence. Actually, we have been working on a decade on several actions. One, I remember going with Hector many times to the city of Tijuana so we can keep renewing the land use designation for port of entry for this area. And two, we worked together with Mexico on setting the areas of the Mexican port of entry. Because if you look at this picture, now that I've moved to, and compare it to the other one, we actually avoided permanent structures like major infrastructure ones. And the area around the port of entry is more like junkyards and auto repair shops. So we actually worked on trying to avoid hitting many major manufacturing or warehouses areas. And for the roadway, you could see Mexico brilliantly is using their easement that they already have for the power towers to build the biodock there. I think the biggest challenge from a right-of-way perspective, like Council General mentioned, is more in the connectors with the Tecate toll road also. And there's only 1 or 2 properties there in question, and the discussion is more the compensation amount, which is something that we're all quite aware also on our side. That's pretty much the comment there.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And you already alluded to the second one, but I'll still ask the question. Como decimos los mexicanos, $150 millones no son enchiladas. Y eso es lo que falta para lo que es en un estimado, basado en la información, el estimado de lo que se necesita para este proyecto. No, para México. Es lo que hace falta, si mal no vi el número.
I can correct that. The table that we showed what we had learned prior. Before this meeting, Mexico has now fully notified us that they are fully funded on the project. They are using the ANAM fund to fully fund the delta for the right-of-way, the roadway access, and the port of entry. So on Mexican side, there's nothing else to be financed. It's fully financed. And Sedena, the Department of the Ministry of Defense, but doing it through their infrastructure department, has even notified us that they have now been deposited the funds to begin construction. So on Mexico's side, they won't go and finance in the markets because that was going to take too long. So they've decided to fully finance it with the ANAM trust fund.
If I may. And also, I think this is very interesting because the fact that we are relying on Mexican taxpayer money to finance this provides us with greater margin of maneuver so that our friends from Sandag and Caltrans, when they approach la Secretaría de Comunicaciones y Transportes and the Mexican government and say, we might need to give some peace of mind to the private companies and banks and financial institutions that will finance this on the long term. And we might need a model in which the 10%, as it was presented here, is provided to you at the end of the year, instead of 50-50 at the beginning, Mexico was able to accommodate your needs. So I think it's something good on both sides, and I'd like to stress what Mario was saying, also the fact that we are relying on Mexican taxpayer money will, I think, make us finish this faster.
Thank you, Consuls. Thank you, Mario. As a suggestion, because I know this will pass pretty easily for a recommendation, but as a recommendation when it comes to Sandag, where I'm only an advisory member, I think we should provide even further clarity on the Mexican portion of it. Again, when they are voting for it, to make sure that everybody's fully aware Mexico is covered, the US through future cash flow is covered, and this project from a fiscal perspective is ready to rock and roll. Just a recommendation.
Supervisor, you're focusing on a significant risk for the project. You're absolutely right, and it's not a question that I have not asked in this venue over the last several years. As a frequent border crosser, seeing all the progress, the $590 million on our side, and not seeing very much progress on the other side, I remain convinced from the comments I've heard today and of late from Mario that the folks on the Mexican side have their ducks in a row, and I'll be recommending I'll be voting to recommend it today. But I think due diligence on our part as far as risk factors, whether it be the one you brought up or the one I'm going to ask Victoria to talk a little bit about, the CBP funding for the actual people to run this facility, are certainly things that are within our purview to ask about. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you. I love the project, love the direction, love all that stuff. I know that I'm going to be asked some of these questions, and so I'm hoping that you can help me with it. When I saw the revenue projection and moving through, and maybe we could go to that slide again. We went through a pandemic. We don't know what the future holds. We also don't know, although I don't think it's going to take more than a few weeks to figure out the pricing dynamic, but we don't know what that pricing dynamic is going to hold for us in the early years. So if we fall short on our revenue projections, how does that impact our paying 50% to Mexico? And or does that just carry it out longer on the payment plan? How does that, if you wouldn't mind just delving how that works, that'd be helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor, for that question. So I think similar to SR 125, obviously we had the pandemic a couple of years ago and our revenues dropped by more than 50%. Fortunately, we had debt service reserve funds that could get us through the difficult times. Similar to this project, we will have debt service reserve funds as well as operating and maintenance reserve funds. To your specific question, though, the 50% that Mexico will get, it will be on an annual basis. We will take a look to make sure that we have sufficient monies to pay off the debt service. And if there is, then they'll get the 10% that same year. If a pandemic were to happen, the first pledge is to our bondholders, so they would get the revenue. And so we would have to hold on to that additional money that we owe Mexico for 2, 3, 4, 5 years until the revenues came back. But they also have the ability to earn interest on that money. So although we are not able to pay them that year, they would be earning interest on that. So when we are able to pay them, they won't really be losing money. It'll just be more of a timing issue for them.
And as we move forward, is this, and I'm sorry, I'm sure it's probably in here someplace, and I just couldn't find it, that revenue sharing, after the obligation of paying all the money back, does the revenue sharing continue, or how does that work moving forward? Is there any cap on the obligation that we have to Mexico?
It continues for a 40-year term. And then after that, it could be renegotiated or it could terminate in accordance with its terms. And I just wanted to supplement something that Andre mentioned in his answer. The 60-40 split will be maintained and will not convert into a pure 50-50 split if we don't meet the tests that I mentioned before, 2 times debt service coverage test, both on a look back and a looking forward basis. If that is not met, then we'll just continue with this 60-40 modified split.
And then my final question is on this, you said, I think 40 years going out. Is that the length of the agreement that there only be one tolling service, Sandag, or does that agreement expire before then and Mexico could start its own toll?
It is the agreement with Mexico.
They're tied together.
They're tied together.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do you need a motion?
Supervisor, please make a motion.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay, and I will second it since I have my microphone turned on. I would add two experiences with tolls and our region. One's very near and dear to my heart, the Coronado Bridge. The toll was paid off, or the bonds for that toll were paid off many, many years before they were due. And in fact, for about 7 or 8 years, don't tell anybody, we collected tolls after they were paid off. But Sandag fixed that, and that particular money, which now sits at about $6 million, funds improvements in the bridge corridor, and it's being wisely used. My second experience with this is a little more recent, the CBX public-private partnership. This is a public-public, but the public-private partnership has been a tremendous success, exceeding all expectations. And at this point is, I think, about a $40 million a year asset to the region. Not only is it tremendously convenient and successful, but it's been a great business decision as well. And it reflects, I think, somewhere in line with this particular project, in that it builds cultural connections, it makes great business sense, and it really bonds us as a region. And so I'm particularly confident about the financial side of this. And I just would add, just as one more of those risk factors that I mentioned earlier, Victoria, if you'd address the current status of the CBP staffing issue, because I know on the DC trip, that was something we worked very diligently on.
Sure. Operations and maintenance for Customs and Border Protection is currently included in the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Bill. So we're seeking funding out of FY23. The process has commenced, and the House is looking at funding CBP at around $14.4 billion. Through our advocacy and working with the senators, we were able to increase that number by almost $1 billion. So now we're looking at $15.5 billion for operations and maintenance. That includes staffing, and that we would hope that would also cover Otay Mesa East for some of the needs that we currently have.
Thank you very much for bringing us up to date on that. I would ask the clerk if Ms. Duchaney was able to connect, because I'd like to give her a prerogative to have her 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Get a minute. Thank you. Sorry, I am, and I apologize. I tuned in a little late, but I'm just really glad to see that this agreement has finally been put together. And as a NADBank board member, we're very pleased to be part of it and to be able to facilitate making this complex project a reality. So thank you to everybody who I know has been working diligently on this, Mario and all of his team and all of you, because this was one of the toughest parts to overcome. So I'm really pleased that both governments were able to come together and that NADBank was able to play at least a facilitator role in helping make this happen. Thanks.
Senator, thank you very much for being with us. We have a motion on the table. I'd ask for now a hand vote to keep, or can we do it? Oh, Tessa says we can use our handheld devices. So the motion is to approve the staff recommendation to send this on to the Sandag board for consideration. And I would say that passes with those members present. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, team. Not just you three, but everybody who had a hand in this. Yeah, exactly. I think that's true. This is a, thank you, Jesus. This is a really, it's kind of hard to understate what a big deal this thing is for our region when it gets constructed. So anyway, all right, we did that. Our next meeting is October 14th. As I understand it, it will be a joint meeting between this particular committee and the Sandag board. Hope you all can be there. It's a 9 a.m. meeting, which is an odd time for us, but be here, please, because we'll be hopefully encouraging the Sandag board to adopt this particular project. Mark your calendars. And I appreciate not only your patience with me as your chair today, but the time I've had to work with y'all. I have a couple more meetings, I think, but I term out in December. I want to say what an honor and a privilege it's been to work with my colleagues as well as the Sandag staff. It's really been a treat. And this, Hector, thank you very much for arranging with Mayor Blakespear for me to be able to chair today. That's an honor too. So thank you all. We'll adjourn today's meeting and we'll see you on October 14th.